Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Junction Reads. I am excited to speak with Rebecca Hirsch Garcia about her book, Other Evolutions. It is an incredibly moving, heartbreaking, death-oriented book, and I can't wait to get into it. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
We start with a land acknowledgement as a reminder that we exist here in a country called Canada because of the colonial actions of the settlers who came before us. Reconciliation requires more than this acknowledgement. We must consistently and mindfully recognize our colonial history and accept responsibility to care for the land, its resources, and all the people who came before us. Junction Reads exists in what is currently called Toronto, on the treaty land of the Mississaugas of the Credit. It includes the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and Wendat peoples. Rebecca joins us from what is called Ottawa, on the unceded traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe and the people of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We recognize the continued displacement and colonization of First Nations peoples across Turtle Island, and we are grateful to work in the community on their territory. Rebecca, I'm so excited. We were talking about this before everyone joined us, but about my theft of book ideas when authors join us. But Rebecca, if you can share with us what you're reading right now.
This started a few years ago because I think we all kind of have a bit of brain rot from the internet and we all want dopamine. But I started reading like three or four books at once, which is the only way. Some people are like, that's crazy, but I find like it really, really works well for me. So I usually have a few books on the go. So I wanted to talk about Middle Spoon by Alejandro Varela, which is this really funny epistolary novel that has this character who's reeling from a breakup, and he's kind of a send up of like what people think of as the coastal elite. He's chronically anxious. He's married, but he was in a polyamorous relationship, and so his anxiety is about that. And I mean, he's anxious to the point where he has two therapists and he isn't telling them about each other. He'll like if he doesn't get an answer he likes from one, he'll go to the other. So this was
Hilarious.
just like surprisingly hilarious and funny and also really sweet. The other book I'm reading is Perhaps the Stars by Ada Palmer. And this is a sci-fi book, which I don't typically read that much sci-fi, but this is written in a very unique style. It's almost a neo-enlightenment style, and some people
Oh,
seem to really hate it, and some people really love it, and I really loved it.
nice.
So there is an in-story reason for why it's written in that language, but I'm not going to spoil it. And it's mostly about a future utopia that is on the verge of war and why that happens and how they get there. So it's been like a super interesting ride. And if you like language and world building, this is a great book for it. And the third book that I'm balancing at the moment is, of course, Canlit, because I love
Oh,
Canlit so much. So this is
okay.
Ladder to Heaven by Katie Welch, which I basically just blind picked up because I love the cover. It's
Mhm.
gorgeous. And also, it was printed by Woolsec and Win, which is a Hamilton publishing company, and I just tend to really love everything they put out.
Yeah.
So this one, I don't know if people are familiar, but about a decade ago now, there was this New Yorker article that went viral because it was about how the Pacific Northwest is on a fault
Yeah.
line and there will inevitably be an earthquake that will destroy communities and cause huge damage. And this is sort of a thought exercise on what would happen to people who have to survive that. So far I'm
Yeah.
really loving this. So those are my
I
three.
loved it so much. Katie came to Junction Reads in January. A fantastic book.
Yes. I'm so
What?
glad.
Yeah.
And like that other people, and it's such a cool idea. When I saw that it had been based on that, I'm like, oh my God, I remember the anxiety I had reading that article. It's terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. That's amazing. Two books I'd never heard of. added to the list. So we're going to hear you read, which is also very exciting, but I'm going to share a little biography with everyone if that's okay. Rebecca Hirsch Garcia lives in Ottawa, Ontario, an O. Henry Award-winning author. She has been published in the Three Penny Review, Prism International, The Dark, and elsewhere. Her debut collection, The Girl Who Cried Diamonds and Other Stories, so good, was the runner-up for the Danutta Literary Award and shortlisted for an Ottawa Book Award. Other Evolutions is her debut novel. Rebecca.
Thank you. So before I start, I just want to give a shout out to Elizabeth Ranger, who is the artist who designed this beautiful cover. And she, funnily enough, is also from Ottawa. So that was just a nice little connection that we didn't know about before she did it. And also,
Nice.
another nice thing is when you write your own book, they give you bookmarks.
Oh, I love that.
It's very nice. So I'm reading from the very beginning of the book, a section entitled Nothing Ever Happens in Ottawa. I always feel too human at parties, by which I mean parties begin at the point at which I am my most artificial, plucked, shaved, and made up, and all the effort reminds me that threatening to burst through all this grooming at any moment is my natural self. She is always there waiting for me at the end of the night, hair frizzing, dress stained, the smell of sweat, familiar, claiming dominion over the sweet, fading notes of perfume. Parties are always a disappointment, too. In the movies of my youth, which always took place elsewhere, impossibly gorgeous women in beautiful gowns were always being romanced by impossibly handsome men in tuxes. At real parties, no one, even at their best, can compare to that soft lens movie magic. I always see the flaws, the lines of undergarments underneath the silky sheen of polyester satin, the men's shoes, stiff and shiny from disuse, announcing their owner's arrival with little mousy squeaks. Women's powdery makeup gathers in the folds of their wrinkles. Men's carefully curated stubble doesn't quite cover the acne scars left behind from teenagedom. There's always a dead ant floating miserably in a bowl of flower arrangements, and the tablecloths aren't made up of linen or any sort of natural fabric. Instead, they are scratchy to the touch polyester, the easier to watch the inevitable stains out. This inability to ignore the uglier side of things is why I never go to parties. And yet recently, Marnie called me to beg me to go to a wedding as a favor for the brother of a friend. I said no, because I always say no, even though I knew that Marnie would, as she always does, get her way in the end. I also said no because I couldn't remember if this brother of a friend remembered about my arm, or if, when he showed up to collect me, his face would twist in disgust before it would correct itself, smoothing into the placid look of neutrality that Ottawans are so good at. Then we would have to spend a whole dreadful night together pretending both that his face hadn't betrayed him and that I hadn't seen it. He remembers, Marnie told me. And when he showed up at my doorstep, there was absolutely no disappointment when he saw me. You're saving me, Alma, he said, lifting up my left hand and holding it tight. For hours, I stood beside him and introduced myself over and over again to people whose names I didn't bother trying to learn. I averted my eyes from the cracks and did my best at playing the role of guest. But then my feet began to burn in my heels, and I noticed the smallest snag in the fabric of my dress, a favorite of mine, and I noticed people kept sliding their eyes over to me and then sliding their eyes away as soon as they noticed me noticing. I felt an itch running down my spine, unbearable, and muttered my excuses and walked away very slowly. There was nowhere really to go, the dance floor and dining area, all one. So I circulated in the true meaning of the word, ambling in a loop around the room, trying to get as far away as possible from my companion, knowing that every step only brought me closer to him and his friends and their stares. And then I was spared for a minute when I saw another friend of Marnie's, whose name I could not recall, but who, seeing me, smiled at me and drew me into the sphere of people she was talking to with the warmth of her gaze. There are people who meet you when you were a child and who always, forever after, see you that way, even when you were an adult. That was the way it was for this friend of Marnie's. She brought me close to her body, to the soft swell of her chest and the smell of alcohol and sweat and perfume all in one, ushering me close to her as if I was a child. Alma, beloved, they are saying that Ottawa is boring, the most boring place on earth. Tell them it isn't, Alma. Tell them. And the man beside her said, Ottawa is where fun comes to die. And everyone made noises of amusement, shadows of laughter at this truism. And I thought of how everyone I had ever loved lived within the borders of the city I had been born in and raised in and would likely die in. Had laughed and cried and loved and hated and nearly died in. And I said, oh, absolutely. I agree.
So I am so glad that you read from the beginning. I'm going to start with my later questions. I have so many questions about characters, favorite characters,
Mhm.
but let's talk about Ottawa.
Of course.
Like I have questions about four human characters, but let's talk about Ottawa as a character. It comes alive and as you say, it also kind of dies in the narrative.
I mean, so I am an Ottawan, obviously. I've lived here my whole life,
Hmm.
and I find it really hilarious and almost useful as a backdrop in fiction because I think other Canadians, when they think of Ottawa, it's usually in a title, a news article where they're talking about the federal government, where Ottawa says this, and when they do think of Ottawa, I mean, I've been on lists where people are recommending cities to tour. Ottawa's never on them. And I find Ottawa itself, even among Ottawans, is really underrated. Like, we
Yeah.
know we're a boring city. Now that there are so many memes, there are Ottawa influencers now because there are influencers everywhere,
Yeah.
and they'll have like funny jokes where they'll be like, what's the best thing to do on the weekend to Ottawa?" And it'll be get in a car and go to Montreal because we know we're not excited. But that's the kind of thing that you can really play with in fiction because,
Mm,
um, when it's not expected, when you have these weird little darkness things, it makes it pop a bit more in fiction.
yeah.
And one of the things in particular that I wanted to do with this book was, especially because it's set in Ottawa, not really make it about the federal government, even though I know so many stories from that as well.
Right.
Everyone here basically works in the federal government, but I wanted to make it specifically something that was rooted in the human and also in maybe the more speculative space.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I love it. And maybe it's because Kaylee lived there for that period of time. But okay, let's talk about Alma. She's a fascinating character. She's the central force, the narrative voice. But there was a moment early on at her bubby's funeral that kind of solidified for me what this kind of retrospective narrative voice was going to do. And it's at her bubby's funeral, and she says, by some Eshki, her aunt, a character I really want to talk about,
Mm.
grabs her by the arm and throws her. And quote, by some miracle, I landed like a cat on my feet. I had avoided being broken. Intact, I survived to be dragged again. And that moment is kind of, it exemplifies this retrospective voice, this idea also that Alma, we don't get her interiority. We don't get the pain in that moment. We don't get the humiliation or the pain in that moment. And I want to talk to you about Alma emotionally. How would you describe her um, as like an emotional character?
I mean, as an emotional character, I think she's someone who's chronically depressed. She's not a very happy person. Which I think might be a little, I mean, who knows? It might be a little isolating for audiences, but I want it to be someone who and throughout the book she goes through, there's a lot of grief, as you said, there's a lot of death in this book.
Mhm.
and she's someone who experiences that death, and she almost doesn't want to get over it. She wants to live in that grief. That's something that she allows almost to shape her, to take over her. So
Yeah.
it's someone who is not necessarily I mean, in all narratives and in the book, in fact, you move forward, but I wanted to have a character who almost kind of resists that pull to be healthy, to move forward, someone
Mhm.
who is maybe not destroyed, but almost destroyed by
Yeah.
the bad things that happened to her.
Yeah. And she finds a sort of compatriot in Mrs. Jench,
Mhm.
Oliver's mom, who I felt Mrs. Jench, not just because she was a smoker and a hoarder, and that like she kind of placed the book for me, like in time, if that
Mm,
makes any sense.
yeah.
Like but not only just like an era of time, she actually holds time. And just like you said about Alma resisting moving forward, Mrs. Jench is kind of, and we can't talk any more about about what she's doing to do that, but she really does um, suffocate time, right? Like she holds on to it and won't let it go. Can you talk about Mrs. Jench in drawing her out from the beginning, from Alma's childhood when she first meets her, which is so great until.
So, yes, of course. So, Mrs. Jench is the mother of Oliver, and Oliver and Mrs. Jench are Alma's neighbors. Um, and she becomes sort of this reoccurring figure in Alma's life. And I just had so I find a lot of people tend to respond very positively to her, even though she's kind of maybe not negative. I don't know how to describe her. I mean, you have to read the book basically,
Yeah.
but she's a very strong figure. And I think part of what people are responding to too is I had so much fun writing her.
Hmm.
That she has a lot of reaction. She's very much a mother, and
Yeah.
she has this very strong relationship to her son, but I didn't want to write her in a way in which maybe we typically think about mothers, or the way that mothers are typically portrayed in the media. And that's
Hmm.
something I think a lot about myself as I age. I'm not a mother, and I'm child free by choice. But a lot of my friends have become mothers. And even as I age, my own relationship with my mother has changed so much. Like, I'm able to see her more fully as a human being and as a person instead of just my mom. So
Hmm.
I wanted to create someone who, technically she does all these bad things, right? She is a smoker, even though she has a son. And I'm a millennial who grew up very much in that time where everyone
Hmm.
was like, you cannot smoke around your
Yeah.
children. We really knew it was bad at that point. Um, so maybe for me, it's like the ultimate bad mother behavior
Yeah.
to smoke in front
Yeah.
of your child. Um, and she's someone who, in addition to being a mother and caring about her kid, also is a intensely creative person who has
Yeah.
this passion for technology and building things, which I find really interesting too. So she sprung kind of out of that, and she was
Yeah.
just such a fun character to play, because I or to write, because I was always imagining, like, what would you want a mother how would you want a mother to react in a
Hmm.
difficult situation, and then make Mrs. Judge do the opposite of that.
Yeah. And she's also kind of Alma's voice, right? Because she says to Alma, I wish you were dead. And
Yeah,
Alma's feeling that. It's almost like Mrs. Jench is the voice in Alma's head and everything that comes out of her mouth, almost like, yeah, yeah, I know.
which is a
Like,
terrible thing to say to a child, because at the point of the
you
narrative in which that
think?
happens, she's just like 14 and she's undergone a trauma, and she's like, yeah, I wish it was you. I too. So
Yeah.
in that way, they're almost like kindred spirits.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
yes.
love that. And okay, so let's talk about another bad character who
Mhm.
is, because you drew her so well, one of my favorite characters, Aunt Aunt Esther Eshke, the one who
Yes.
throws Alma across the room at the funeral. Um, let's talk about her because she is so real to me, and I don't know if it's because I have terrible aunts growing up, but let's talk about, they're not listening. They will never listen to this, but let's talk about her.
So I think that's really funny that you pinpoint Eshki as a favorite character. She's also another, and it's so funny because I remember as I was writing this at one point, I had a friend, we were talking about it, and I said, I think I just like writing terrible women.
Yeah.
Like that's my it's just so much fun. So Alma comes from a very small family, and
Mhm.
Eshki is kind of a subsidiary character, but she's also Alma's a biracial character. Eshki comes from the Jewish European side of her family, and Eshki's also a racist.
Yeah.
And Alma is she is a visual minority. She's brown. And Eshki, even when she's a child, Eshki is sort of like unrepentant about pointing out the differences, making her feel uncomfortable, making her feel not part of the family. Um, I think, unfortunately, that is a really common situation in biracial families. And
Mhm.
while most of Alma's family is very accepting, I mean, I've talked to so many people where there's always like that one uncle, that one aunt, and like you have to keep being like, no, you're terrible, or correcting them all the time. Like,
Yeah.
Eshki has a daughter who also is always, kind of correcting her. The other
Mhm.
members of the family are always trying to correct her and protect Alma, but she's just a character who is kind of also awful in her own way.
Yeah.
Also a mother, another awful mother.
Another awful mother. And the choice to have that character name her daughter Marnie the same as Alma's sister Marnie was, I just thought, a stroke of genius from like a writerly perspective. It just epitomized a bad person, but in
Yeah.
again that sort of brilliant way.
I
So
explain it in the book, but that's like a huge cultural slight
yeah.
because in Judaism, you only name children. Well, you can name your children whatever you want, but if you're naming your child in honor of someone, that person has to be dead. Basically, you don't name
Mhm.
someone after the living. And uh, uh, Alma's parents name her older sister Marnie
Mhm.
after their deceased grandmother. And then Eshki, who's the sister, also names her child Marnie. So there's like a living Marnie. It's very ugly. Like it's not something that would be done. It's so, yeah, it's like that pettiness, that evilness.
Yeah, great choice for Eshki.
I also love and that sort of thing is also I happen to love like doubling also. Like I really like that you're drawing the connection between these characters, but I think very much the Marnie and Marnie B is
Yeah.
one of the more explicit examples of doubling in the narrative. Like I like that
Mhm.
there are these cousins, both Marnies.
Yeah, and the sisters, and they're
Yeah.
they're kind of like flip sides of each other from
Mhm.
biracial kids. Marnie's the
Mhm.
one that's the kind of white appearing kid, less
Mhm.
brown. And so she goes to Montreal to go to
Mhm.
school and tells everybody she's not half Mexican, half Jewish. She's in fact this white girl from Ottawa. And Alma's so upset about that. But I love siblings, so I want to talk to you. I like anytime there's a novel, a short story, or anything that has siblings in it, I'm all over it. I want to talk to you
Me
about,
too.
yeah,
Me
I just love it because there's the potential for like heartbreaking love and support and everything that goes along with unconditional love. But then there's also that thing that you do with unconditional love, which is I hate you and I'm not going to talk to you for the next 5 years of my life kind of thing.
Mhm.
So let's talk about Marnie and Alma, but more as a sister unit.
Yeah, so Marnie is the white passing sister. And they sort of at the beginning of the book, they sort of grow up in this little like enclave. the Glebe, which is a real neighborhood in Ottawa. And it's almost like a little village. Like, I don't know if I'm sure they have these in Toronto. I mean, they have them all over in big cities, but they're sort of like historical houses almost that have kind of been preserved in one neighborhood as the city grew around them. So
Hmm.
the Glebe's almost like this village within Ottawa. And within that community, everyone knows them. So it isn't really an issue that one of them is completely white passing and one of them isn't. I mean, this would be an environment where people know their parents, they've grown up with both girls, they know their siblings, it's not an issue.
Hmm.
And when Marnie goes to school, she kind of reinvents herself because she doesn't have a distinctly Hispanic last name. In the
Hmm.
book, their last name is Alt, which is actually a German Jewish name, but I don't think a lot of people would know that. You know, it's not distinctly, there's no, let's say, distinct markers that people would
Yeah.
identify.
Yeah.
So, I really did love the idea of writing about siblings. I mean, like you, I find it a fascinating relationship, and it's
Yeah.
something that can go through so many betrayals and so much closeness. Um, and that's what happened with these two characters too. And but I also there is a bit of an age gap between the two sisters, and I very much wanted, especially in the beginning, to sort of write that perspective of the younger sister and how it's almost like when you're younger, you almost worship the older sibling like a third parent because
Hmm.
I mean, in reality, they might only be 12, but to a 7-year old, it's like, oh my God, they're an adult, they know everything.
Yeah.
So I think that's what made the betrayal feel even more distinct because prior to that, Alma really did look up to and have this pretty strong relationship with Marnie, at least on her end, which isn't
Hmm.
necessarily the case for Marnie because she is the older sibling.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I'm the youngest. I have three older sisters, and so maybe that's why I love Alma so much. But the like devastating rejection that she feels when she
Mm,
goes to Montreal, because it's like she's rejecting her, right? Not just their life, not just who they are as people, but who Alma is, right?
mhm.
As a kid who presents entirely differently than,
Exactly. And it's not
yeah,
something Alma could even think of to escape because that's her lived reality.
yeah,
So, and I think it also, again, going back to the doubling thing, it sort of flips their dynamic in ways that become
hmm,
more apparent as they age,
yeah,
where Alma sort of becomes the one who has a certain amount of whereas before she was the younger one who looked up to Marnie, Marnie sort of has those clay feet. She's not someone she looks up to anymore.
yeah.
She develops kind of an attitude about her because there's an imbalance in the relationship.
Hmm. Yeah, it was so great. Okay, I want to talk about death, of course, but before we do that, can we talk about a writerly thing?
Sure.
You structure the novel in four parts, but each of the section, I don't even want to call them chapters because they sort of appear in the middle of a page
Mm,
randomly. But the four sections, vanishing, absence, loss, and homecoming, and then these titled sections starting and stopping randomly. Can you talk about that as a writerly choice? Because it's
sure.
really
So,
effective,
well, I'm
surprisingly.
glad you like them.
Yeah.
But so the choice to tell the story in little fragments is very much because this book is written in a way in a response to two books that were really meaningful to me that have that style. And one of them is The History of Love by Nicole Krauss,
Hmm.
which is also a book that deals a lot with loss. And the other one is Lost Children Archive by Valerie Luiselli. And both of those books, and I find again, it's just a very interesting, again, stylistically weird way
Hmm.
to write a book. So I always knew that was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then for the four parts that the book is structured around, I wanted each section to revolve around a death, or at least the first three, and then the last one is revolves around something different, let's say,
Hmm.
homecoming. But there is a very big loss or death in each of those sections that kind of
Hmm.
shapes how Alma sees things. So that's in a way that became easy to structure the book that way.
Yeah. And so
Mhm.
let's talk about death then, because it really
Yeah.
is this, as you suggested at the beginning, it's something that Alma's both trying to escape, but and afraid of and avoiding, and she's questioning it, like what every almost every person she knows, what happens after you die. But she's also kind of entrenched in it, right? Like she won't let herself live outside of it, which is again a really great writerly choice. But let's talk about what you wanted to do and not what I wanted as a reader.
Oh, well, I'm interested in what you wanted as a reader, but I think I think part of it is just that um so I'm a third generation Holocaust survivor on my mom's side. And I think that it's funny because um so there has just always been death in my home. Like my
Mhm.
parents are very open about it. We talk about it a lot, or at least maybe more my mother does because my mother is the Jewish side. And
Yeah.
I mean, when you have that, even though it's been three generations, she didn't grow up with aunts, she never knew her grandparents. It's still
Mhm.
something that is very much something we talk about and that all the time, and she's been very open with that. And there's a part where Alma's father is grieving and he goes and he talks to her, and she's very, very young at this point. I think she's only 5. And he
Mhm.
talks about how, you're very young, but if this was during the Holocaust, like the Nazis would kill you, which is an insane thing to say to a child, but is
Yeah.
also the way my parents. It's so funny because again, I now have friends who are becoming parents who ask me like, how do I explain the Holocaust to my child?
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm like, what do you mean? Like these were conversations that I had as a child with my parents. So,
Yeah.
um, in that way, death has been something I've been very curious about and has been open in my family for like a long time.
Mhm.
And also, I dedicate the book to my mother, who I say taught me how to keep the dead alive because she did. She was always talking about like people who died. We remember them. It's
Amazing.
such an important part of grief, the
Mhm.
remembering, and in that way, you can keep people alive in a certain sense.
Mhm.
So that's kind of the artistic drive I kind of have to talk about this. And I also feel very much like the book was kind of a thought exercise about the worst that can happen, which to me would be not being able to get over your grief, to
Yeah.
have it completely destroy you, to not be able to move on with your life, which is such a terrifying thought that,
Mhm.
that you would be alive, but you wouldn't really be living because you would be so caught up in the past or in reliving these memories.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the darkness comes in the book. And why Alma is so entrenched in this grief is because that would be like a huge fear of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and also too that like and you alluded to that, the intergenerational trauma of the
Yeah.
Holocaust, right? Is that like it's going to be felt 6 generations from now, right? Because
Yeah.
it's just carried through in the DNA
Yeah.
of everyone. And so it's almost better that like I have hope for Alma, I think more than any other character because she has that openness to death that
Mm.
that I have more hope for her at the end because I feel like it's going to she's going to have the strength to carry it forward,
I
maybe.
mean, I did have that hope by the end. I felt like this was one of my more hopeful books
Yeah.
or my hopeful works because I mean, I've written short stories before this. And I
Yeah.
remember working with my editor, who we also worked on the short stories with, and she's like, the end is kind of happy for you. And I'm like, I feel that way too. But yeah, it's it's some I think also it's funny that you were talking about like the entrenchment and everything, and we're talking about being around death because I was thinking about the land acknowledgement as well. And I don't remember if it made it into the book or if it's something that maybe very briefly, but I mean, I live on land that used to be owned by other people, and I'm very
Hmm.
aware of that. And I'm incredibly grateful that, at least we're taking steps to have truth and reconciliation and that we do land acknowledgements because again that isn't something that was I was actually really fortunate. I knew about that as a child because my father
Yeah.
had friends who were indigenous who talked about that, but there were so many people who didn't know, who didn't have those experiences.
Hmm.
So it's a part of our culture, and I think it's a really good thing to talk about.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've had conversations with people a lot over the years about land acknowledgements, and I get it. When you hear it read over the PA as you're sitting in your desk at a, Toronto School Board high school or whatever, it can sometimes just feel like they're just sort of checking off boxes. And Kaylee and I have been working really hard on our land acknowledgement over the last 14 years. And it really is important to us to make it mean something because
Yeah, I've been
otherwise
fortunate.
we're just checking off a box. I don't know.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be in spaces where people put a lot of thought into it, and it's been very meaningful. I'm a board member on the Ottawa Fringe, and we have
Mhm.
one that is played before the plays, and I find it very meaningful.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, it's important. Okay, so you talked about the humor, the darkness of it, um, and family. You create this really great family that is, as you say, truthful and honest about death and the darkness that they have in their lives. But the humor comes across very clearly to me. So I want to talk to you about that. Is it something that just comes naturally as you write? Or do you have to consciously, like, are you, okay, we're at this funeral, this is going to be really dark. I need to like create some levity.
it's funny actually. Like the whole drama gets attacked. Um, no, I think I just have I'm glad. I mean, some of these conversations I have with interviewers, I'm glad when they find things funny because, when you're writing,
I'm also really dark. So it's,
well, I find it really funny myself. So,
yeah.
I mean, not the whole book. Obviously, there's a lot of darkness in the book, but there are parts for sure that are meant to be like kind of funny.
Hmm.
Like the part you referenced where with Eshki, where she physically attacks Alma, who's a child.
So good.
It gets almost like absurd because everyone's in the kitchen and they all start fighting, and Alma's faction of the family is like, how could you attack a child? And Eshki realizes she overstepped but is trying to save face, and they all start fighting. So for sure there were moments that are meant to be silly. I don't think, I mean, maybe certain writers can write something that's like entirely dark, but I've always find like little bits of dark humor end up in my work no matter
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. And I don't know about you or anyone listening right now, but the funerals I've experienced in my life, the kind of post reception family dynamics that happen, I have never laughed so much as I have in those times, in those like post funeral family gatherings. It's strange when you think about it, but
I mean, some things are so absurd. Death is really absurd. I mean,
yeah.
while I was writing this book, actually, I lost my uncle, and
Oh,
that was a
sorry.
really tough loss for the family. but we still laughed through it at times, because it's so the bureaucracy of having to
Right.
like, you're like weeping, but you have to write letters to the government being like, this person's actually dead. It's the whole thing's ridiculous. So there is a lot of humor to be mined in those dark moments. And
Yeah.
I mean, thank God people like I and hopefully you and other people have friends and family to carry us through those moments because it is a really tough time when you lose someone.
Yeah.
So, I
Yeah,
mean, you
it
have to
is.
laugh at times, otherwise, you would go crazy.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is, right? Like the tears are really and truly the flip side to happiness, and that they
Mhm.
exist together is not surprising at all.
Mhm.
So I want to talk to you about the sensitivity with which you present Alma. She's she lost an arm in the accident. I think that happens pretty early on. I'm not giving anything away.
She
Um,
mentions it pretty early on, and then the
yeah,
circumstances of how it happened
I couldn't
are
remember. Yeah, I know you
yeah,
mentioned I couldn't remember where you were at when you were reading that beginning part. It was the accident more. I can't remember where the accident happens in the like the car. Anyway, it's okay.
yeah.
Um, I won't keep going on and belaboring the thing. So I felt like I have a kid with a facial difference, and so I'm very aware of how characters with facial and body differences are presented in books. They can
Mhm.
sometimes be quite tropish, but you give Alma um, like just so much honesty and so much truth, and the way she walks around the world. I wanted to talk to you about that in maybe research or maybe how you thought about what you were gonna give to Alma
Mm.
as a character.
Right. So Alma is an amputee. That came out of the narrative.
Hmm.
But I do have it was really funny when I got like the copy edit notes because the copy editor really liked like the all the hospital stuff. And I have a chronic disability, so I'm like, oh, I'm used to being in the hospital. Like I some of that stuff is from real life. Like every
Yeah.
time a doctor is gonna tell you, you're gonna live a perfectly normal life. Like they mean to be reassuring, and you're like, oh no, like this is gonna change my life forever. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think one of the things, I mean, she's definitely a person. Alma is a person with a disability, but she's not just a disability, and that was very important to me.
Hmm.
um I there's so much great material now on amputees, and there's so much available. I knew I was going to be asked this, and I'm like, I looked it up, I forgot the name. But one of the things that helps Alma and Marnie reconnect in the narrative is that Alma does not like her first prostheses. It's very
Hmm.
uncomfortable, and she doesn't like the look of it. And Marnie, her sister, is a visual artist, and she becomes interested in painting and then later creating different sort of prostheses for her sister. And this is actually very true to ish years with the rise of 3D print. That stuff is very easily available to find. There's something called, oh gosh, I'm forgetting the name now. I think it's called the Alternative Limb Project, where they have beautiful crystal prostheses.
Oh,
And then
wow.
this isn't part of the book, but there are also people who do those hyper realistic ones.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of interesting information out there, not all of which makes it into the book, but was just something that was interesting to research.
Hmm.
Um, and I also find that there's definitely a lot more visibility for people with disabilities and limb differences in the UK.
Hmm.
There's this great show called The Last Leg that came out of the Paralympics. where two of the hosts of that show actually either have amputees, and I think one of them was born with different limbs, and they
Hmm.
make jokes about it, and like it's part of the show, but it's not all of the show.
Hmm.
And that's just one example. So there are plenty of people out there who just have are showing like their different prostheses or the way they adapt certain things. Like
Hmm.
Alma has a bike that's adapted because there's two handles and she gets like a bar welded in the middle. And I
Yeah.
saw that with someone who had only one arm, but they had adapted a skipping rope to
Yeah.
only have like
Oh,
a bar and
amazing.
then you could
Yeah,
skip
yeah.
with it. So it's really cool, like all the different things people use. So again, that was pretty interesting to research. And
Yeah.
only like a tiny bit of it ended up in the book, but
Yeah.
there's a lot out there.
Yeah. So Kaylee, who in another life will be a private investigator, a highly paid private investigator, has found the alternative limb project
Oh
and the
my
last
God, that's
leg
so great.
for everyone if you want to look it up. I'm telling you right now, like if anyone's
Thank you, Kaylee.
got a question about something and cannot find the answer, just message Kaylee, they will find it. Or if you want to pay them to be a private
Amazing.
investigator, they will also do that. Um,
Amazing.
that was my last question, and I'm sorry, Kaylee. I know I have to give you notice for that, but does anyone have any questions for Rebecca and the Other Evolutions book? I want to ask you what you're working on right now because I am a short story lover, as everyone knows, and I'm hoping that you're going to say you're working on another collection of short stories. I mean, it's okay if you're not,
You're like,
but
I forgive you. Forgive you. Well, I had I mean, it's so funny. My agent, and this is the conversation of all agents, they're like, don't do it, Rebecca. Don't
oh,
don't write more short stories. And I'm like, I can't help it. Um, I do have a short story that was published in Prism International last year. So I'm still writing them.
yeah,
We hope that eventually there will be another collection because I simply cannot stop. And I,
yes,
like you, love short stories. Oh, I saw that you have a short story collection,
yes.
which is gonna go on the TBR. So I'm
Nice.
excited
Thank
to read
you.
that.
Thank you. Very, very
Um,
dark. Very dark.
which is
No,
exactly my vibe. So
and I
I love it.
am, and maybe we should just start a short story renaissance book club of some
There
like,
there are so many great short story writers in
yes.
Canada, and I feel really lucky we have that. And we have the denuded Gleed, which
Yep.
is, but it's unfortunately only for short story collections. So I'm like, we need
Hmm.
more prizes to encourage more short story writers.
Yes. And I feel like, honestly, if you asked any sort of literary scholar, from anywhere around the world, what kind of book Canadians would be known for, I think it would be the short story collection.
Well, people, I mean, Alice Munro, despite what we later discovered about her, is
Yeah.
still such an icon, and her influence within our culture is so undeniable.
Hmm.
So, but it's funny because I was touring this book, I got to talk with a few more um booksellers, and it's so funny because all the writers I talk to are like, I love short stories, they're the best, and all the booksellers are like, they do not sell.
No. Too
Which is,
bad.
no,
God.
I love them so much.
Me
It
too.
doesn't matter to me. I'm still out there buying them.
Me too.
Um, and yes, I'm working on another novel to answer your question because hopefully it I was the reason this actually Other Evolutions came about is because I really wanted to sell my short stories, and my editor was like, I will publish your short stories if you write a novel.
Oh my
So
God. Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't. It's not like terrible labor. I did want to write a novel.
Right.
Uh, it's not like this was forced out of me, but I think it's,
Torture.
yeah, it's just to give people a bit of behind the scenes of the bookseller thing. My agent was like, maybe if you write another novel, we'll sell both of them. So
Right.
this is how they. they come about.
Very smart. I'm going to take note of that. I'm
Hmm.
going to
You
write that
have to
down.
write your next novel before we get more short stories
Yeah,
from
well, I
you.
have a novel coming out in 2028, but
Oh,
now
nice.
I'm
So you're
like,
already there. There you
now
go.
I'm like, yeah, yeah. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? I'm sorry. I hogged all that time.
That's okay. It was fun.
No, it was good. Oh, I love that, Kaylee. Shane Hollander from Heated Rivalry is from Ottawa. And I've seen so many memes about him, Ottawa.
Oh, I know. Now we're famous. I don't know what to do. I have this it's really funny. I was very lucky and was invited to do a writer's residency in New York, which I almost didn't want to do because of what's going
Right.
on
Hmm.
currently. But I was like, I'll be an ambassador for Canada. So I was telling everyone I was from Ottawa, which no one had ever heard of. And now
Right.
after Heated Rivalry came out, everyone started messaging me and they're like, where is my hockey boyfriend? Do you have a hockey boyfriend? Like, I want to go. And I'm like, oh guys, it's going to disappoint you. I mean, you're very welcome.
It's fiction. It's fiction. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Rebecca, thank you so much.
Thank you so much
Um,
for having me.
it was
I'm
so
glad,
great.
even though we talked about death a lot, that we ended this with laughter.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You can get other evolutions straight from ECW Press, to be perfectly honest, if you want to do that, or your local library, your independent bookstore. And I have two Instagram live chats this March. On Thursday, I talked to Margot Lapierre about her poetry collection, Ajar, and then I talked to David Bergen on March 19th. And then we're back to in person on April 12th with KR Wilson, who is here in the room, Ashraf Zegal, and Alice Fitzpatrick, and Adele Purdom is hosting. And that is all. Thank you again. Bye, everybody. Have a good night. Take care.